Hey, welcome back to another Get Geekish podcast. Sanford and Son over there. We are Get Geekish. I'm Bino. That's Derek. Thanks for joining us once again on the podcast circuit here. You look like you have something to say.
Well, the way my brain works, I meant to do, but Sanford and Son is just embedded in my...
Sanford and Son overtook Bewitched.
Yeah, it's embedded in my brain, dude, because of Scrubs, so...
It's a good reason for that. And if you can't guess by our crypticness already, or non-crypticness, we're talking about TV sitcoms this week.
Yeah.
But TV sitcoms of old. This kind of got sparked off because the whole WandaVision phenomenon.
WandaVision.
If you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to give away any spoilers.
Yeah, we're not talking WandaVision. We're just...
I really like the show. I mean, my take on the show, the first episode or two, I looked at it and went, well, this is weird. Could be okay. And now I'm absolutely in love with it by the time we're 7 episodes in. But
I think everybody had that feeling with it. You're watching it and you're like, all right, what the heck is going on? This is okay. So yeah.
If Marvel Studios hadn't made me fall in love with a talking tree and a raccoon, I might not have made it for the first episode, but I had hope.
That's what we can have.
But in that show, every one of the times that Wanda is traveling through different eras in the show, that the show is actually filmed and shot very similar to an old American sitcom along the way, like almost perfectly matched with some of the different sitcom shots, even changing the aspect ratio once they broke from the 70s to the 80s, or the 80s to 90s, one of the two on there. But it's for a film editing geek, it is pure magic, and for a sci-fi Marvel geek, it is pure magic on top of magic. But that got us talking about sitcoms and some of the old ones, because a lot of the sitcoms of old aren't household names anymore, but thanks to things like Nick at Night, I don't know about you, Derek, but I spent a lot of my childhood watching sitcoms from the 50s and 60s, even though I wasn't alive back then.
Yeah, I mean, so let's see here. Like, growing up I didn't have cable, but my grandma did. So I watched Nick at Night there, had the Golden Girls and everything like that. But before school, when you had to get up early before the sun got up sometimes, especially in the winter, I would always turn on the TV and there would be like MASH and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And I would just watch those constantly, and the Monkeys as well. So that's kind of what got me started too. And I reached out to you. Yeah, exactly. I reached out to you. I was like, we should talk about sitcoms from every era, starting with the 50s. And this was going to be part 1 of our podcast, because I don't think we could do 50s to now in 30 minutes. Yeah,
we can get through the 40s, 50s, and 60s pretty good today, because the lists get much, much bigger once you get past that. Yeah. But I think we'll skip most of the 40s sitcoms because there's not really any.
Well, I was going to say, in the 40s, it was still pretty much radio dramas, right? Like radio shows.
Yeah, there's nothing actually listed on Wikipedia on the American sitcoms. There's actually nothing in the 40s. They have a category for it, but there's nothing in there. So maybe there was some along the way somewhere. But you also keep in mind that TV was still a pretty new thing back then. So it's not like there was production crews in every city making new shows.
Well, not everybody could afford a TV either. So
yeah. I still remember my dad telling me the story the first time they got themselves a color television. I used to make fun of him all the time for that, and now my daughter's making fun of me for things.
The circle of life.
So it begins. The 50s, being that there was only 3 big-name American sitcoms, they were fairly decent. You had The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, and Leave It to Beaver.
That was the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
They probably went beyond that because a lot of the shows had a little more staying power, but that was the 3 big ones that came across in that decade.
Right.
And I remember watching plenty of those. I never got into The Honeymooners, but there was references to The Honeymooners all the time.
I was gonna say I don't think I've seen maybe I've seen a full episode, but it's the whole to the moon, Alice, that type of thing, and they're just very over the top characters that a lot of people have referenced, especially in like the 90s and the 80s. They took those and referenced them. I mean, Flintstones was kind of based off those characters a little bit. And you can tell that, especially in other sitcoms later on down the road. But Honeymooners to me was, I never really got into it. Leave It to Beaver, for whatever reason, I watched that, even though, like, there's nothing that funny about it, especially if you watch it now. It's just, like, that wholesome family goodness. And then, of course, I Love Lucy is just a timeless classic. Like, that one actually is funny. And
I Love Lucy has a lot of moments that even as a kid, watching a black and white TV show that was 30 years old, there were parts where you were cackling.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, too, is I know maybe you and I are different. I mean, obviously we are. But but I just remember, like, some people were like, especially my age at that time, are like, why are you watching this? It's in black and white. I'm like, why not? It's funny. Like, it doesn't matter to me as I look at the content, and not how it was filmed or anything like that.
Yeah, and there was a bit of nostalgia about it, and I think I had that problem too when I go back to look at it now. If I try and watch some of these shows, I'm not sure how 7-year-old me actually sat through them. There just wasn't much of an option. And I guess maybe that was how like Nickelodeon, when they had Nick at Night, really kind of captured the audience, because they knew if they put on Double Dare at 5 but didn't put on another set of cartoons till 9 o'clock, that, well, I'm going to watch some of these. Might as well see what's on. Okay. And I'm sure they made bank on royalties, because they were probably getting a lot of money to play those reruns at the time, because that was still kind of a new thing for getting that content.
Well, and the thing is, too, and this could be something that we can dive down the road later on, too, but I kind of wonder what the royalties, is with the sitcoms of the 50s and the 60s. Because, I mean, they're still getting aired, right? So do they have that monetary value like Friends does, where they're getting, what, $1 million per rerun or whatever? Or is it like, since there's nobody really surviving from that show anymore, does it kind of trickle down to their relatives? Does it even exist anymore? Because I mean, they don't air it constantly, but it happens at like 1 a.m. now, or like right before the infomercials.
And I'm sure
start.
There's some cable network or streaming network that has all these going all the time. I mean, heck, there's a Game Show Network doing TV game shows nonstop, 24 hours. It's been going on for decades.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and the thing is too is you know. When people talk about Nick at Night now, to me, Nick at Night is still, I Love Lucy and, Golden Girls and, the old ones from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Nick at Night now is like Friends and other stuff. And I'm like, you guys got to stop.
I feel like I have to embed this video in the podcast blog, but there's just somebody who looped together a bunch of the classic Nick at Night commercials.
Oh, yeah. Do it.
It's just looking at it, it's bringing back all kinds of memories right now.
Well, and that was the thing, too, is like growing up, we didn't have streaming services. I mean, we've talked about this before. The back in my day thing. We didn't have the streaming services. We didn't have this. We didn't have that. If you woke up at 1 a.m. and you couldn't sleep, you turn on the TV, it's either infomercials, Nick at Night, or something else that's showing also these reruns.
Or remember, this might blow some of the kids' minds. Remember when TV stations used to sign off?
Oh, yeah.
Be 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night. It's like, this is signing off. We'll see you tomorrow morning. And then nothing but static until 6 o'clock in the morning. I wake up with the Pledge of Allegiance and a rooster crowing. We're back on the air.
Yeah, that was. I'm glad I didn't have to deal with too much of that, because I still had those channels that would like. Or I just pop in a VHS. But anyway, all right. So 50s, we got those 3 main sitcoms. Could you still watch Leave It to Beaver now?
I don't think I could. I don't think I could not giggle every time they called him the Beef. But I think I just get really bored, because it's a wholesome show about nothing. Mm-hmm. Oh, the kid got in some hijinks. Oh, he dropped his jacks down the drain. His mom's gonna be upset about him. Poor Beeve.
It's really dated. It is really dated with that one, and I think that's maybe where I Love Lucy kind of holds its own. Is it's not. I mean, it's still dated, obviously, but it's still fun. Like, there's still fun hijinks to be had, and Lucille Ball was like, she carried the show, obviously.
Yeah, and I feel like the show like that one actually lent a little bit of realism to it. As you said, they're made up characters, they're over the top. But the fact that there was just a little bit of irreverence, everybody could see a little bit of themselves, and they went like, I don't think I ever watched Leave It to Beaver and thought, you know what, that kid really gets me.
Yeah.
Like,
I never saw myself as the Beav or Wally, so. And what was it? What was his parents' name?
oh,
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's
Beverly. I don't remember. Do you remember the the '90s movie that they tried to make out of that?
I do not.
Yeah, no. They tried to make him more like. It's a weird movie.
Maybe we
weird.
need the CW do that now, like they did with Archie and Sabrina and Riverdale. Come back with Leave It to Beaver, 2020 style.
Leave It to Beaver now with a cleaver. All right. So those are the three main ones from the 50s. Obviously, remember, there was how many channels back in the 50s? 4, if that.
Yeah, probably something I don't know.
So, all right. So, okay. 50s,
now we're moving on to the 60s.
60s, man. Psychedelic.
60s, still a lot of black and white, but there are a few colored options that start showing up.
What do we got?
The Beverly Hillbillies.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Bewitched.
Oh, yep.
The Brady Bunch. The Flintstones.
Yep.
Get Smart. Gilligan's Island.
Get Smart was in the 60s, huh?
Green Acres. I Dream of Jeannie. More Leave It to Beaver. The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. The Munsters and Petticoat Junction.
I've only not heard of Debbie Gillis.
I always turned the channel off when Dobie Gillis came around, but I remember seeing his name all over the place. Petticoat Junction is the one of those I've never seen.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen it. I Love Lucy wasn't on in the 60s, huh? Huh.
Yeah, apparently not.
When did the Dick Van Dyke Show come out?
Well, let's find out here. Thank goodness we have the internet.
I know, right? Well, so I'm thinking I've seen the Munsters. That show still holds up today.
I Love Lucy was only on from 1955 to 1956.
Wait, it was only one season? I feel like there's so many episodes, though.
I feel like that way too, but
well, okay, there's spin-offs. I know, like the Lucille Ball show and whatever. Okay.
Yeah, but for the original show.
When did Dick Van Dyke come out?
Dick Van Dyke Show. It's an important part of this.
Yeah.
This is why I know you tune into the podcast to watch me look things up on the internet, so I appreciate you for that.
Especially people who are driving right now going, what the hell is he talking about?
Dick Van Dyke Show 65.
See, that should be
1961 to 1966.
Yeah,
well, the Dick Van Dyke Show wasn't a sitcom.
Yeah, it was.
I guess it kind of was.
Yeah, because I mean, even WandaVision kind of made fun of some of the stuff.
Well, this is, you know what, Wikipedia's let me down.
Dude, Wikipedia is a trusted source. Come on now.
I know. I'm looking at the list of American sitcoms by decade, and it doesn't have the Dick Van Dyke Show. Dick Van Dyke Show on Wikipedia says.
When did the Monkees come out? While you're looking that up, the Munsters still holds up today. Beverly Hillbillies is one that I've only seen a few episodes of. I've seen the movie that they did in the 90s.
The Beverly Hillbillies was a fairly decent show. Like it was another one that was over the top and
it was
just
fun.
Outlandish enough that it was fun.
Yeah. Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, I watched constantly because that's when the repeats were on. And when they switched the Darrens or Darryls, I think it's Darrens, in I Dream of Jeannie, I got mad. I was like, the other guy was funnier. So I was late to the game, but I still was with everybody when they switched those guys.
It happens, yeah. And the Monkees also in the 60s. I love the Monkees show.
Dude, the Monkees was such a great... for a fake band, like...
Okay, I am upset. I officially am not donating to Wikipedia ever again.
Have you ever?
No.
Oh, there you go.
But we're also missing for the 60s the Andy Griffith Show, Gomer Pyle, Make Room for Daddy, Family Affair, My Three Sons. I watched the heck out of My Three Sons. Flying Nun, Hazel, Real McCoys, Dennis the Menace, which I watched all the time, Hogan's Heroes, Jack Benny Show, Mayberry RFD, McHale's Navy, Father Knows Best, Gilligan's Island, Patty Duke Show, Addams Family, Please Don't Eat the Daisies, F Troop, My favorite Martian, Donna Reed, Mr. Ed, Car 54, Where Are You?
Happy Days? Did that come out in the 60s?
Let's see, Ozzie and Harriet.
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. I guess I could look it up.
I don't see that on there, but that's... Okay, that makes me feel... Because I'm like, there had to be more shows than that. Like, we didn't just watch every TV show ever made in the 60s growing up.
Happy Days came out in the 70s. I'm just getting ahead of myself.
I got said, though, because I loved watching the Dennis the Menace cartoon. For some reason, the intro, when there was the little tornado that came across the screen, I really enjoyed that for some reason, but I got upset because I didn't like the kid that played Dennis, because at the time I was watching Dennis the Menace on Nick at Night was also the time that they had the Dennis the Menace cartoon that came on once in a while.
Oh yeah, and then the 90s had the Dennis the Menace movie, which is just fantastic, but with Walter Matthau, but
but I was kind of let down because you're like, oh, it's Dennis. Oh, this is just because Dennis the Menace in the TV show was very much like Leave It to Beaver, only Dennis was the one that got into trouble.
Right.
But by getting into trouble, it was, he accidentally broke a window while trying to bring cookies over to his elderly neighbor or something like that. Like,
right. It was always an accident. Well, and the thing is too is, I'm glad you brought up Hogan's Heroes, because in my mind I was like, does that qualify as a sitcom? That is one that I absolutely loved. I loved that show. It was so much fun and so quotable. Shorts. I know nothing. Just all of that fun. Like, it just takes me back because it was one of those ones where especially like when I had basketball, I had to wake up at like 5 a.m. and I hated it. Hated my life. But I if it was either I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, Hogan's Heroes. Those were the three that cycled in. Every once in a while, I got lucky enough to catch a Monkees episode, but it was mainly those three. And I don't know. The Monkees, I don't think they get enough credit for their sitcom, because, I mean, that was top notch.
Well, it was fun, but you got to take a grain of salt, too, if the Monkees are pretty much just like a ripoff of the Beatles.
Oh yeah, they were a fake band. They didn't even know how to play their instruments. So,
I know. So it's like giving them credit for it was fun stuff though.
And the Andy Griffith Show, I will say that I did watch that a lot because my dad liked it. But again, that's one of those ones where I think it wasn't necessarily funny. I mean, Barney Fife was. Don Knotts was
Don
American
Knotts was
hero.
funny, but the rest of it was just it had a really catchy theme song.
It was very wholesome, Now it's gonna be stuck in your head, so you're welcome. But that was the one too. It's very wholesome. But then you look back and read some of the stories that happened behind the scenes. You're like, ooh, maybe it wasn't.
I feel like there's a lot of that. Like people, especially some of the older generations, go back, and this is the time they go back. Well, I want to go back to the time when America was great and everything was awesome. But you hear the stories of a lot of these sitcoms and the things going on behind the scenes. You're like, no. The Norman Rockwell thing wasn't necessarily real for most people. That was.
Oh, dude, you read the behind the scenes about I Love Lucy and oof. And same with Gilligan's Island. First of all, Gilligan's Island in the 60s, I think that's when it started going really weird and jumped the shark, right? It went all kind of like...
Yeah, I got to clarify one thing, too, because if I looked at another list, I should check more than one source before I do these things. From the 50s, there's lots more, too, that we missed in there.
Oh.
From 5-0's Best, Ozzie and Harriet, Donna Reed, Abbott and Costello, Dennis and Menace, Real McCoys, Dobie Gillis, Amos and Andy, Life of Riley, Bob Cummings Show, Mr. Ed.
Oh, Whittleburr.
Yeah, Mr. Ed was a great show. Putting that peanut butter on that horse's lips. And how they could always work this guy living in the middle of a suburban city, having a horse barn in his backyard, but how the horse still managed to be a part of so many other scenes that watching the show never felt out of place.
Dude. And okay, so you mentioned crap. What, the comedy Abbott Costello.
Mm-hmm.
I owned quite a few of their movies. I love watching them. And it just made me think of the Three Stooges. I guess, was that not qualified as a sitcom? Because that was right around there, right?
It's probably both these things. You got to cut us some slack. We weren't alive. Oh, wow. Yeah, the Three Stooges. started in the 20s.
Well, I mean, the actual, the one we know with Mo, Larry, the actual, you know what I'm talking about. Not Shemp, Curly, and not the weird
Larry
ones
Moe
before
Curly.
that. Yeah.
Well, I guess 1960 to 1972 would be the one we're thinking of. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, there we go right there, because I watched it. So I really liked the Three Stooges so much that my grandma would buy me VHSs and posters of the Three Stooges and everything like that. But it's funny how we forget this stuff, and then we bring up this list, and instantly all these like memories just come flowing back of like either, like I said, getting up at 2 a.m. There's nothing else to watch, and there's these old episodes on because they could afford to play them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, oh, that's great, because yeah.
And the part that feels weird is even as a kid growing up watching these, like, I remember when I'd see My Three Sons animation of the three shoes with the hands like clapping on and going through the stuff, watching all this. And at the time, I'm thinking, man, these shows are so old. These are like ancient. They're like oldies music and blah, blah, blah. And so that would have been, mid to late 80s at that time when I was watching these on Nick and Night, which make the shows 30 years old. So
look at this stuff that we're...
Yeah, so now...
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So now we look at things that we were watching growing up in the 90s and now 30 years old. So when I put on Ninja Turtles or Transformers, like, my daughter could literally think that are as ancient as the... My ego just took a kick to the junk.
Yeah. Oh man. All right, let's fast forward. So there's quite a few actually great sitcoms in the 60s.
Yes.
Some that probably shouldn't have lasted long, but it was the time period where they just wanted to keep stretching that dollar. And I think we did a Gilligan's Island one once, or we talked about it. So there's that. Let's fast forward now to the 70s, where we can kind of wrap up part 1 of our sitcom podcast, and we can get things going. So let's dive into the 70s, wrap up part 1. Here we go. What do we got?
Okay, 70s. We got Taxi, The Odd Couple.
Taxi's a sick. Oh yeah.
Sanford and Son.
There we go.
WKRP in Cincinnati.
Oh, that was such a good
Soap.
show.
The Bob Newhart Show. Barney Miller. The Mary Tyler Moore Show. All in the Family. MASH. There's more coming. Hold on.
On that one, would you consider MASH a sitcom?
Yeah.
To me, it seemed more like a drama.
But there was more funny stuff in MASH than almost all those other shows we've talked about so far.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's true.
Like, but MASH touched on some tough topics, too, but they threw a lot of humor in there. Happy Days, 1974, Laverne and Shirley, Brady Bunch, Three's Company, Maude, Good Times, The Jeffersons, Welcome Back, Kotter, The Partridge Family, Mork and Mindy, What's Happening, One Day at a Time, Alice, Chico and a Man, Rhoda, The Odd Couple. Some good stuff coming in the 70s.
Happy Days, and I don't know if this counts as a sitcom because it's more of like a sketch show, but Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. I watched Laugh-In constantly. I don't know why, but it was always
that was the one that
funny
had
to
the
me.
big like psychedelic board that they popped their heads out of to tell jokes, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And they would do like little sketches. Yep. And then Three's Company I watched constantly. That's the stuff that was on at Nick at Night for me. Was like Three's Company, and the Golden Girls was in the 80s, but the Three's Company and everything like that. So I remember like Three's Company, especially being a younger kid, rewatching some of the episodes now, I'm like,
see, I thought Three's Company seemed weird to me because as a kid, I thought like I wasn't allowed to watch Three's Company because everything was just like, wait a minute, what?
Exactly. Yeah, I thought
he's
that
not
too.
supposed to like all those girls at once.
Dude, there's so much in that humor. And then when they changed Chrissy, that's another show that had a lot of drama behind the scenes. But so there's a lot of good ones. And of course, Mork and Mindy is a spinoff of Happy Days, as weird as it is. Yeah. And then what? Joni Loves Chachi. Did that come out in the 70s? I don't remember. I think they progressively saw that people wanted that lighthearted feeling, and there's just so many that I think some of it kind of got oversaturated and some great shows kind of got overshadowed.
Well, I feel like Hollywood has never quite conquered that, because everybody wants to fall in love with these characters and these stories and wants them to last until the stories aren't good anymore. Right. And so they try and capitalize and do spin-off shows and follow-ups, but they're never the same because they're trying to, take the exact same jokes and put them into a different setting. True. Or they're trying to just go a completely different direction, so it's not going to be like the rest. Like, well, but you look at the spin-offs, and every show I can think of that has spin-offs going on, with the exception of Avatar: The Last Airbender, any spin-off has generally taken a pretty big step down that I can think of.
I mean, Mork and Mindy did all right for a little bit. Helped launch Robin Williams and everything like that. But, I mean, even the spinoff from Avatar, Katara, wasn't not Katara. Korra. It wasn't that well received. Because a lot of people wanted the original characters back. They wanted that magic. I mean, it's still a great show, but again, it wasn't like, it was like, eh. So I think you're right. I think they just see this and they kind of like, hey, and when we get to the 90s, I think the 90s was specifically bad about doing spinoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
I feel like the 70s have so many like iconic ones, though, with Three's Company, the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, the Vern and Shirley Happy Days. Like, there's so many of those things that for generations, they're just iconic. Even if you've never watched the Brady Bunch, you could recognize the Brady Bunch. You'd know something about the Brady Bunch. You'd heard about the Brady Bunch. You'd talked about the Brady Bunch.
Here's a story of a man named Brady. I mean, even that show. I mean, again, this is a whole nother podcast. We could go into the darkness and behind the scenes, but...
And I hated the show, but I still watched it. Like, every time it came out, I was like, oh, Brady Bunch again. But I would still watch countless episodes of it. Like...
You know what? I think I did, too. I wasn't a fan of it.
Uh-huh.
It was always weird to me, and I don't know why. And then... Yeah, but it was always like, why am I watching this? I'm too lazy.
Because there's nothing else on. Price is Right doesn't start for another 45 minutes.
Right?
There, so many. I'm like, my brain is now dripping with all kinds of memories right now. I need to go watch some YouTube videos and see some of those shows again. Because I also feel like this is one of those nostalgia things. We've talked about all these shows up to this point, but I don't know about you. But if I was talking to a younger person or one of my kids, there's very few of these that I would recommend to say, no, you should sit down and watch it. You'd love it. It's no. When they came out, they were amazing. When they did reruns, I loved it. But if you tried to watch it now, the magic would not be there. It would just be an odd show.
Dude, so we forgot to, I mean, again, they're kind of like variety shows, so I don't know if they count. But you had the Red Skelton show in the 50s, which... for whatever reason, I loved. And then the Jonathan Winters show in the 60s, which, if you ever have a chance to watch Jonathan Winters, I mean, some of it did not age well, but he's a funny guy. And he'd always have Dean Martin on there. And with the Dean Martin show, right? He had his own little variety show, too. So, I mean, there's some good sketch shows. They don't count in the sitcoms, but...
Yeah, I didn't get into a lot of the
variety
shows that much. There were a few of them I liked, and a few of the 90s kids ones, but a lot of the adult ones, I think my age when they came out, I was just between demographics. A lot of them seemed like mom and dad TV, not I want to watch this TV.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I don't know. I was a weird kid. I loved the old black and whites, Abbott Costello, Three Stooges, Red Skelton, I Dream of Jeannie, and then like when they went to, well, I Dream of Jeannie was in color. But Bewitched started out in black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, the black and white Bewitched was pretty solid stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's just weird to me, too, because like you said, talking about all this now, my brain is like...
I find it funny, too, because I think back to the Addams Family and the Munsters. And as a kid, I loved the Addams Family so much more than the Munsters. The cheap knockoff of the Addams Family, whatever. I didn't care that much. But now as an adult, I feel like the Munsters is still more relevant than the old Addams Family TV show ever was.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the Munsters, like a lot of the storylines still hold up now, and they're still relevant, like you said. And it's just, it's not as kooky, right? I mean, it's still like these weird characters, but you watch it and you're actually learning something. With Addams Family, it's just kind of like,
it's just kooky.
Fun. Yeah, it's just fun. It's in the title. They're kooky.
and spooky. But so there you go. I mean, that's the list that covers the 50s through the 70s-ish of TV sitcoms here in America. And we probably missed something. So before you start writing an angry hate email to me, how about you write a happy, hey, guess what you forgot email? And we'll include it on there for you. I can also see what other sitcoms you grew up with. And not necessarily grew up with, because I grew up with these reruns.
Right.
But it still counts as growing up with. So let us know what you think at Geekish and all the social medias. Find out what we missed and what one of your favorites was, or favorite memory about a sitcom show.
From the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s.
Yes.
Part 1.
Anything after 1980, you're going to have to wait for another podcast. Just saying.
Well, it's just weird to me, too, because you look back at the 50s, how many episodes did we not see because they were filmed on something different that got easily damaged? So, I mean, there's tons of lost episodes that you and I haven't seen because we're too young, you know? Hey, that felt good to say we're too young.
Destroyed.
That felt good to say we're too young for something. Oh,
I can't wait to tell somebody at work about this.
Right? Oh, man.
Well, thanks for joining us for this week. TV sitcoms. I'm going to go watch some old ones. I don't know about you, but let us know at Get Geekish, and we will talk at you next week.